Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 with me, Sam Paton, and once again coming from my living room. And I hope you are all doing well this evening. And we will carry on this evening with the coronavirus update for today. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 1,719,716 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and UK Government regional testing centres since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,513,251 have been confirmed as negative. 206,465 have tested positive. There are 466 new confirmed cases of COVID-19. This will be an underestimate of the numbers of cases. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. There was 19 new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus COVID-19 infection now stands at 7,441. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 614 were in hospital last night, 50 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. today, 1,789,377 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 123,686 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show that 124,797 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 231 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. And once again, we send our condolences to all those family and loved ones who have lost loved ones. Now for the ONS update, since it's a Tuesday. The percentage of people testing positive for COVID-19 continued to decrease in all 4 UK nations in the last week ending the 27th of February 2021. The hospital admissions rate in England also included a decrease in the week ending the 28th of February. The number of registered deaths involving COVID-19 in England and Wales decreased in the week ending the 26th of February. Around 1 in 4 people in England and 1 in 6 in Wales, 1 in 8 in Scotland and 1 in 6 in Northern Ireland had antibodies against the COVID-19 in the last 28 days to 11th of February. The majority of adults in Great Britain, 94%, said they had received or are waiting or would be likely to have the COVID-19 vaccine if offered. And this was between the 24th to the 28th of February. The number of all deaths registered in England and Wales in the week ending the 26th of February was 12,614. Nearly a quarter, 2,914 of these deaths mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, a decrease from the previous week. However, the total number of deaths registered was 9.2% higher than the 5-year average. In January, COVID-19 was leading cause of death in both England and Wales. And for our next story, changes to the COVID level 4 restrictions. More people will be able to socialise outdoors following good progress in suppressing the coronavirus COVID-19, the First Minister has announced. Up to 4 adults from 2 households will be able to meet locally in any outdoor space, including in private gardens, for social and recreational purposes, as well as exercise from the Friday the 12th of March. People should only go indoors if it is essential in order to reach a back garden or to go to the toilet. Outdoor non-contact sports and group exercise will resume for both adults in groups of up to 15 people from this date. Young people aged 12 to 17 will be able to meet outdoors in groups of up to 4 people from 4 different households, participate in outdoor non-contact sports and other organised activities in groups of up to 15 and travel across local authority boundaries to participate in such activities. Should progress suppressing the virus continue, the Scottish Government intends to reopen places of worship with attendance limits increased from 20 to 50, where there is space for social distancing on Friday the 26th of March. The final decision will be taken on Tuesday 23rd of March, ahead of Passover, Easter, Ramadan and Fahaski. Now for the next story of today, or this evening. Potential further case of new variant. An individual who travelled from Rio de Janeiro to Edinburgh via Paris on the 19th of February has tested positive for coronavirus COVID-19, with initial laboratory findings suggesting the case may be an example of the variant of concern first identified in Japan, but associated with Manaus, Brazil. This case, which is currently being investigated by further confirmatory genomic sequencing, is separate to the 3 cases of the same Brazil variant identified in the north-east of Scotland in February. After enhanced contact tracing, no further cases were detected from the cases detected in the north-east. Of the 22 passengers on board the Air France flight from Paris to Edinburgh on the 19th of February, 11 passengers, including the provisional positive case, went into managed quarantine at Edinburgh Airport Hotel. The remaining 11 passengers were exempt from quarantine in the hotel and isolating at home. Negative test results for both day 2 and day 8 were recorded for 13 individuals. The National Contact Tracing Centre are following up with the other 8 passengers and will take all necessary steps to protect the public more broadly. No further positive cases have been detected in Scotland. Clinical and trial data continues to be assessed to examine how this new variant may respond to the current COVID-19 vaccinations. And for our next story, under 60s to begin receiving vaccination invitations. Invitations to coronavirus COVID-19 vaccination appointments will start to be issued this week for people aged between 50 and 59 who were not included in previous priority groups. Vaccinations to those aged between 55 and 59 years old, Group 8 on the priority list, will begin the week beginning the 15th March. With those aged between 50 and 54 years old, Group 9 on the priority list started to receive their injections the week after that. Over the next few weeks, the volume of vaccine available to Scotland is expected to increase, and provided these supplies arrive. The vaccination infrastructure in Scotland is ready to deliver around 400,000 vaccines a week from the end of March. The National Vaccination Programme is currently moving through Group 6 on the priority list, which includes those with a particular underlying health conditions and unpaid carers. Next week, a self-referral online service will launch to enable any eligible unpaid carers who have not received an invitation to register themselves. In addition, 148,026 people, 43% in Group 7, those aged between 60 and 64, have now received their first dose. And for our next story, the Scottish Budget passes Stage 3 proceedings. As we go on air, the Scottish Parliament is set to vote to pass the Scottish Budget with cross-party support from the Scottish Green Party and the Lib Dems. The budget includes a further £20 million being allocated in the Scottish Budget 2021-2022 to help disadvantaged children and young people to improve their educational attainment. The additional Pupil Equality Fund premium was announced by Finance Secretary Kate Forbes following the successful conclusion of talks with the Scottish Liberal Democrats, who have agreed to support the budget in Parliament tomorrow. The package also includes £15 million for support for skills and training to back economic recovery in the North East, and confirmation that £90 million provided this year to support a national council tax freeze will be maintained in local authority budgets going forward. The Scottish Greens have welcomed measures to tackle poverty and sow the seeds of a green recovery in the budget. Now for our next story. Labour drop Glasgow Kelvin candidate for respecting Scotland's right to a referendum. The SNP candidate for Glasgow Kelvin, Cobab Stewart, has said that the Scottish Labour leader Annie Sawar has failed his first test of leadership by making it clear that those who support independence are not welcome in his party, after removing a Holyrood candidate for comments she made about independence referendum. Holly Cameron, who was contesting the Glasgow Kelvin seat, told the Sunday National that Labour respects the right to have a referendum and said the only quibble was over timing. Scottish Labour MSP Neil Findlay said the decision to remove Ms Cameron as a candidate was absolutely outrageous and said that her views chime with many Labour voters and with the views expressed by myself, Monica Lennon, and many members. Now for our next story. Scottish Greens will take no part in Tory plot. The Scottish Green MSPs have refused to take part in Tory plots to undermine the integrity of the Scottish Parliament. The Scottish Greens will not back the Scottish Conservative motion of no confidence in John Swinney, after glaring hypocrisy from the Tories, who crowed about evidence being released last week, but this week declared that it wasn't enough. Despite the evidence released last week clearly showing the Scottish Government failed the women complainers at the centre of the inquiry, some members of the Harassment Committee have decided to prioritise claiming a political scalp. And for our next story. The European Parliament lifts legal immunity for Catalan MEPs Clara Ponsati and Tony Conan and Charles Puigdemont. Responding to the vote, Carlos Puigdemont. Responding to the vote in the European Parliament to remove illegal immunity from 3 Catalan MEPs, Clara Ponsati's solicitor Anwar said this vote to lift immunity from the Catalan MEPs makes the European Parliament complicit in Spain's abuse of fundamental human rights. By bending the will of Parliament to the needs of Spain, Europe has set a very dangerous precedent for any other rogue state which wishes to attack democracy. Clara Ponsati has committed no crime, save that of defending the fundamental human rights of the Catalan people and their right to vote. It is abhorrent that any politician should face imprisonment in the heart of Europe for carrying out the democratic will of the people. This is certainly not the end of the matter and will be fought legally to the highest levels. At this stage, it would be inappropriate to further comment. And for our next story, which is over the water, the jury selection starts on the George Floyd murder trial. Right, we've just been told that they are voting in the Scottish Parliament just now, so we will keep you updated as as the results come in. The jury selection starts in George Floyd murder trial. In Minnesota today, Judge Peter Cahal of the Hennepin County District Court began screening jurors in the trial of Derek Chauvin, the former Minneapolis policeman facing facing murder and manslaughter charges for his role in the death of George Floyd during an arrest which caused an outcry around the world, despite the objections of state prosecutors who say the high-stakes trial should not begin until a higher court resolves how many criminal charges Kelvin should face. The trial is seen as a landmark case on police violence against black people in the United States, a country where police officers are almost never found to be criminally responsible for killing civilians, including including in cases involving the death of a minor or where the suspect was unarmed. Judge Cahill has called for a small group of potential jurors who have been promised anonymity for the duration of the trial and begin asking them if they knew
is
of any
yes
parties.
70, no 53. There were no abstentions. The motion is agreed and the Budget Scotland Bill is passed.
And there we go. The Scottish Budget Bill has now been passed in Parliament. Now, and going back to the jury selection, the judge has set aside 3 weeks for the jury selection alone, mindful of the difficulties finding impartial Patolians in the case that has convulsed the nation. The death of George Floyd has become an international symbol for campaigners against racial injustice. Now, and for our next story, COP26 is our best chance to address climate change. COP26 is the international community's best, perhaps only chance to address the threat of climate change, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has said. Speaking at a virtual gathering of Scottish businesses and investment leaders today, the First Minister said that welcoming the International Climate Change Conference to Scotland was a huge honour carrying major responsibility. She announced that the Scottish Government will establish a net zero leaders group to support state and regional governments in their climate ambitions by providing practical and technical support for the implementation of net zero commitments. In partnership with Bloomberg Philanthropy, I can never say this word, Philanthropies, the Net Zero Leaders Group will play a leading role in increasing knowledge among governments on actions to transition to net zero. A new global capital investment plan will be launched later this month, setting out how Scotland can attract investment we need to become a successful net zero economy. And for our not quite our last story, the Scottish Government emergency support for Ethiopia. 3 Scottish-based charities will provide urgent humanitarian relief to thousands of people caught in the conflict in northern Ethiopia through the support of the Scottish Government. Tear Fund, a Scottish Catholic International Aid Fund, the SCIAF, Mercy Corps will each receive £113,450 from the Humanitarian Emergency Fund, HEF, to run aid projects, 2 in the Tigray region and 1 across the border in Sudan. More than 1.3 million people are in need of urgent humanitarian aid after conflict erupted last year. Fighting continues to be reported across the region, and hundreds of thousands of people have now limited access to basic commodities. In addition to food, Tear Fund's project will provide hygiene and health support, while SCIAF will supply funds for immediate assistance to those who I've lost myself. Sorry, I just lost my place there. Will supply funds to immediate assistance to those who have lost their homes. Mercy Corps will provide support to refugees from Tigray. Mercy Corps will provide support to refugees from the Tigray crisis in Sudan through its established health service in the Rukaba refugee camp. Now for the last story of this evening. This is a wee bit of a kind of news-breaking story. Piers Morgan has now left Good Morning Britain. And basically, he's definitely not coming here to broadcast in Scotland, I can safely say. But he left this morning after controversy over his comments about Meghan Markle. Media regulators Ofcom are now investigating him for over 40,000 complaints after he said he did not believe her experiences with the media and the palace racism. Now, here at Broadcasting Scotland, as much as we don't want him here, and we would not welcome here, we do wish him all his success and his claim on universal credit, and we hope he enjoys his time on universal credit. So apart from that, this evening, thank you very much for joining me here, and we hope you have a lovely evening, and I hope you join us once again tomorrow night with Gordon, who will be in the hot seat in the studio. And once again, this is when I ask you to help us out financially, whether it's to subscribe, £5 a month. You can do that by, if you go onto the website just here below my chin on the screen. You can see the details. £5 a month basically helps us to keep the shows running, keeps the lights on, and allows us to give you the programmes that you deserve. But if you can't afford £5 a month, a small donation would be lovely. If you can't do that, then sharing our programmes and getting the word out there would be amazing. The other thing that we are always on the hunt for is volunteers. We are desperate for volunteers to help out in the studio, behind the scenes and in front of the camera, and especially when it comes to the election at Holyrood, we will be needing people out there at the polling stations and giving us up-to-date accounts of what's happening. And if you would like to get involved, again, the details are just below my chin on the screen, and if you have a look there, and there is a volunteer page there on the website, so just go in and pop in your details and someone will get back to you. And once again, we're doing our best to try and raise enough money to basically pay staff and be able to employ people as well. So that's all from me this evening. Thank you for joining me for tonight's news bulletin, and please join Gordon, and thank you.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
Are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. please support us if you can afford it.